When Itchy Break was created, the whole premise was to make sure people understood to take a break from themselves. We all need those reminders to laugh, to love, to have fun, and be a little silly. Just be in the moment and take a break. That's our mission. Just take a break and reset yourself. So, welcome to It's Your Break.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Mertz, and welcome to It's Your Break. And coming up in a few minutes, we're going to talk about how accomplished and high-functioning people can create real breaks in a stressful environment. How do you do that? Well, you got to look inward, into yourself, into your own design.
It's part of the process to go through the noise, and we can get stuck there. I look at it as restoring access through regulation, through awareness, mindfulness, sustainability, talking about that from a personal perspective rather than we think about sustainability as something that happens outside of us.
And we're going to be talking about inner design with Rubina Chadha, its founder and owner, coming up next here on It's Your Break. Hey, you. Are you following us? Oh, don't worry. You should be. You should be following us everywhere. On our socials, like Instagram, Threads, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube, all at It's Your Break. And you should be consuming us on your favorite podcast app, like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Audible, and iHeartRadio. So, it's okay. We want you to follow us. And remember to like and subscribe. And if you get a chance, give us a comment or two, and maybe even a review. Welcome back to It's Your Break. And like I said, today's focus is going to be kind of like a mindfulness awareness. And we are with Inner Design founder, Rubina Chadha. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, no problem. And, when you reached out to me, I wasn't sure how to take the pitch at first, but you wrote it so well that I was like, this is really interesting. It's not something I normally talk about or even think about. And we're going to be focusing around Inner Design, your company, but what you focus on, the trauma-informed professional that you are, and how you can get that mindfulness to center back in and get people focused back into, I guess, what is it, reality in a way, or is it just a certain mindset?
I like to say more than mindset. I mean, we get kind of flooded out there with mindset. It's just coming back to alignment, right? It's actually who you already are, who you are when you show up at you. We all say that, right? Oh, I'm at my best. So how can we be connected to what is actually our best in an aligned way without having to look out there and try to be productive or all of that trying? It's part of that, like, let's try a little less and let's just be, I guess, is kind of what I would put it as. I think that, I look at it as restoring access through regulation, through awareness, mindfulness, sustainability, talking about that from a personal perspective rather than we think about sustainability as something that happens outside of us. But how do we sustain ourselves in the way that we were designed is really what inner design is, and the work that I do through it.
So how did the whole concept of this company come about? Like, how did you get into this type of profession? Was it your first career choice?
It's been a ride. I actually personally went through my own burnout and recovering through it and coming through by taking, just like how you talk about taking a break, having that pause and finding that, hey, this is maybe something more of us need to do. This is something that not only just helped me, but it was a problem I was going to solve for other people.
And how did you end up solving it? Like, what is the solution here? Because can you break it down? Well, basically, I guess what I'm trying to say is, can you break down how this actually works? Like, take it step by
Yeah.
step.
Absolutely. So there's a method to it. Inner design has a full method Currently, I'm writing it into a book so people can have access to it. We're not quite published yet. It's still in that tweaking process, you know how it goes. But what I came to find out was many people, build our identity around this constant output and producing, and especially right now, always being visible, always engaging. And what happens is you're creating your inner system in a way that you're never getting a reset. And so, going through mindfulness techniques, breath awareness, I like to call it, more than just breath work. Breath work is something you can practice, and people have different concept around it, but just like, the most physiological thing that we have access to is modulating and having, ability to regulate ourselves through our breath, which is immediately linked to our emotional state, our mental state. So actually taking that mindset and actually putting it into yourself of like, what does mindset look like and how does it live in my body, and going through them as techniques and going through the method and having a way to have access to it. So the reason that why mindfulness and awareness is important first is until we know, like that whole concept of, you don't know it's a problem until you know it's a problem, and it's almost like half solved once you realize this is a problem. So kind of bringing that awareness in a sense of saying, yeah, this is really draining me, this is really not giving me options to live my best life or my most aligned life. That's the first step. And then going through the methodology of, what does it feel like in my body? What does it feel like day to day to me when I'm not in that constant pressure? And how can I have access to that when I have to like step into a situation, excuse me, when I have to step into a situation and I know there's going to be pressure around it, how can I go into it in a way where I can kind of hack my system, I guess is a simple way to do, right? Everyone's talking about these biohacking, just using some of these awareness, mindfulness techniques, and getting yourself through stressful situations in a way that you can actually find your break.
Yeah, it's funny how our body is connected in different ways. Like I have ADHD, so sometimes I do forget to just take a good breath every so often. I'll pause longer
Yeah.
than I'm supposed to. But I also got sick once, so I learned really quick what the vagus nervous system does. And if you
Yes.
don't breathe or you put too much pressure on it, and how it can put stress on you, and for a lot of elderly people, it will cause them to to pass out a lot. So it's fascinating how those simple breathing exercises and techniques can just either just start to relax your body, and how fast it actually works. To me, it's just one of those things that I learned to start doing on my own to a degree. Don't know if I'll always do it correctly, but it definitely helps calm me down faster than most things.
Yes. Yes. Another secret thing that I love to share, or it's not a secret thing, but it's like my secret sauce, I guess I'll say, my inner design method is that we apply creativity. And so a lot of times people, you're right, like with the nervous system, we're not realizing it until something's going wrong. That's usually when we realize it, like, oh, I'm sick, like how you said, you get ill, or you are, going through like how I went through the burnout or whatever it is, until those signals start screaming at you. There's no like real sign to make changes, but creativity is something that we all have. It's not just limited to certain people. It's not artistic, talents in a way. It's expression. And so having that, as like when you look at children, we all had that, right? We were scribbling away with a crayon, thinking we were making the masterpiece, or just enjoying ourselves, whether there was no concept of like, is this a masterpiece or not, right? So we really judge ourselves, and kind of going back to some of those things, simple doodling, journaling. We know those things are great for us. It lets off steam, helps us to relieve stress, and brings us into the present moment. And then creativity is part of active problem solving and realizing, looking at things, coming up with different perspectives, that kind of stuff. We're never really taught, and or actually, I would say almost we are kind of like forbidden to do these kind of things, right? It's kind of not a thing that you do. So, bringing that, recognizing that your internal state in real time. Are you forcing? Are you holding? Are you allowing? Are you able to allow creativity to flow through with clarity, and bringing all the other great things that creativity brings for us? And so, and that can only happen, just like you said, the vagus nerve, the nervous system, once it settles. then you really get the access to what could be, out there for you without the pressure, without the noise, expectation, or whatever it might be. It's something real, and we all have, that ability to rewire ourselves, reset ourselves.
Creativity is the whole, like my whole being basically. So it's like what I do is how I came up with this podcast. It's how I've done all my voice work in the past. It's how I've done, videography and photography that I've done, and I do draw a little bit, but it's weird because when I was doing radio production and I was a radio uh, program manager as well as a production director, I would tell people creativity isn't always thinking like really smart, so, like way out there, like smart, like you just go crazy, like smart stuff. It's finding, like you said, problem solving. It's finding the solution to the problem. So when we're writing, copy, okay, what is our goal? Well, how do we get there? And how do how do we now we know how we get there. What are the tactics and what is the pathway we have to take to get there? So now we're thinking these things logistically, so we're problem solving along the way. And then you can add in those little nuances, right? Whether it's comedy or whether it's drama, into those different, elements of whatever you're doing. But it to me, yeah, you hit it right on the head. It's problem solving first, and people don't realize that's all creativity is.
Yeah, I like to say that creativity is in one way how you participate in life. It's not about only what you produce, but you're able to produce from the state of like awareness. And we kind of realize that as we hone in on something that we're going to, like you were talking about, putting together different projects and coming up not just with the solutions, but expanding your perception of it and becoming sensitive to what's there. You get deeper access, and it is something you can tune into. It doesn't take a specific skill or talent specifically, but you everyone can access a creative perspective from whatever it is in their life, something that they enjoy. It just could be something, we all lay on the lawn growing up, I guess most of us back in our days at least, staring at the clouds and imagining something or the other. That was that creative energy happening in our body, in our brain, and how relaxing that was, right? And how much that actually interrupts like a stress cycle. Now we may not feel like we have time to lay on the lawn and stare at clouds, um, but you can do some certain little things with simple moments and kind of like, bring that same awareness, that same pattern back to yourself. It's basically about what's going on in the brain.
And you're you actually led me right back around where I was going to go, because one of the things that you hear people struggle with, especially like my wife, she gets annoyed with me because I can fall asleep so fast, I can shut down so fast and turn things off. Now, it's not that I don't get stressed and I don't fester on things from time to time, but she can't quiet the noise. Does that make sense? How do you combat that in these situations?
Yeah, sometimes it is. I've seen a lot of people have a hard time closing their eyes and meditating, and they want to do these wonderful things, go on a retreat and all this stuff, but it sounds really daunting, and it doesn't work for everybody in the sense that it's part of the process to go through the noise, and we can get stuck there. So I'm not saying that everyone has a hard time meditating or it's not for everyone, but a lot of times people can't just relax from it. All of a sudden they feel, excuse me, they feel more, aggravated because all these thoughts are coming, or the thoughts that they didn't realize were already there are now they're quiet and they can hear them all. So that internal state, really we need a chance to kind of see what works, and it's different for everyone. So that's where I would say like breath awareness, or even like open eye meditation, or walking meditation, or something active where you are moving yourself and then you notice all of a sudden it's quiet. Or again, my favorite thing is bringing people to a creative workshop where I tell them, we're not going to make art, we're not going to make a masterpiece in here. You're going to just doodle, or you're going to just go through these different steps, and nobody's going to look at the outcome of it, but it's part of the process. And we match breath work to, creative expression, painting, drawing, coloring, whatever it is. And lo and behold, a lot of people will say I closed my eyes before to try and meditate and I had all these rushing thoughts. But as soon as I was there with a crayon or a paintbrush, I got really quiet inside and I felt a lot of peace. And it reminded me of being a child where there were no cares in the world for these few moments. I could put those aside. So I think that you kind of have to find what it is. And I really think that sometimes bringing something like that is just a magical little opportunity. Maybe, for your wife, she could do something like that, or take herself on an evening walk, look at a little bit of nature so that she's moving and then the thoughts are not so overwhelming and they kind of come to a little bit of still. Again, a lot of people will journal at night before going to bed. And I think that's a creative expression because you're just letting all of those thoughts come out on paper so that you can clear yourself, be free of, all of these decisions, communication, all of this output that we have in our day. And it's a nice time to kind of, draw the line and mark that as like, this is the end of my day. And now I'm going into this peaceful time so that I can rest and relax, and then lying down and doing some deep breaths, 5 to 10 deep breaths, and just watching that, or doing a body scan, simply just like relaxing different parts of your body. And then just, it definitely, she will fall asleep. She'll get bored. Her mind will get bored.
One of the things I want to pick back up on is something you talked about early on in the interview, which was burnout. And specifically talking about how you can see sometimes successful people just get into burnout. And oftentimes it even leads down to dependencies on certain things. What are the key signs to really identify these burnouts? And, is it just, the super successful that experience it, or is it, from the lowest worker to the highest workers?
It's a great question. I think that burnout is across the board. I don't think it's limited to just at one range. I think that everybody faces burnout. It's basically your nervous system saying, I've had it. I've had enough, right? You need a break. We'll call it a break on the show, right? I usually say you need a pause. And the pause is where you are going to have access to clarity returning. And so I don't think the break is something you need to earn after burnout. I think that regulating, going along with it, allows you to say, I need a break from things. It's, without a pause, the noise around builds, the decision making becomes reactive, your creativity gets lost. And it's not that, you need to chase it. Like, that, oh my gosh, I'm having the burnout. The signs, like you would say, is just the things that you feel you've had access to before. You mentioned like sometimes people doing all kinds of things and it goes in different directions. I call them coping, right? Or a lot of people say coping mechanisms, but usually those kick in when we're facing burnout or we're facing some kind of irregular stress. Our body and our brain will start to cope. And sometimes we go to access things that are maybe not in our highest interest or not the healthiest options, but you're coping. And the fact that you're coping is like you're surviving, and that's your nervous system way of keeping you alive and keeping you going, and whatever that looks like, however extreme or intense it is or less. And you really, at this point, need to kind of come to a self-assessment, we'll call it, right? Of do I feel like I'm doing the best I can for myself? And the answer should always be yes, even if you're coping, without judgment, without feeling, oh my gosh, I'm not doing the greatest. And then how can I do better for myself? I need a moment in between. I need that pause. I need to take a break so that I can just look at it and say, what things do I have that I'm going to be able to do better for myself? Do I have access to my breath? And a lot of times we don't have the awareness around being able to regulate if we are facing something that's, either in the sense a huge stressful situation, or you're facing a burnout after over and over going through stresses. Is basically what burnout is. It's the cumulative of stress. So just looking at it, like how much further can I push? And usually that's the question I hear people ask when I see them. And it doesn't matter if they're like, at the peak in their career, or they're really at the start of their career, or they have seen a lot of success or not, or whatever it is. It's like that experience of like, I can't do this anymore. I can't take it anymore. That's the signal of like, I'm facing burnout. I need a little break. I need to get a reset. I need to take a pause. And without having to leave everything, because sometimes we have so much stress because we have a lot of responsibilities and a lot of things that are, relying on us, people or whatever it is, right? And so we can't leave it. So how can I continue to do what I need to, what's being demanded of me or what I'm responsible for without having to leave it and still get a break, get an access point to something? And that's really where the key of breath awareness, mindfulness, having some of these stress management techniques and start to build a little bit, get some little creative opportunities we can't create when we're under stress, because we feel like there's too much of a demand of output. So how about just the process side of it is what basically the techniques that I would, prescribe in those kind of situations.
That makes a lot of sense, and it's a lot of great detail you just gave there. Rubina, let's focus a little bit more on your website and maybe even some of your social media stuff. What's available on your website and what type of social media do you have?
My website is theinnerdesign.com. And on there, you can hear me speak. I was recently on a docuseries called Women in Power, and I walk you through a little bit more details of the inner design method. So that's on the website. There's a lot of podcasts on there for you guys to go and listen to, read some articles. I also have programs on there. There should be a workshop that's coming up actually quite soon. And so you have access to come meet with me live. I have a free 5-minute nervous system reset also on my website. I'm on social media, on Facebook at, Rubina Chadha, Rubina C. Usually you can find me anywhere. On Instagram, I'm the most active. It's at the official Rubina. So you can find me on Instagram. And I'm happy to, connect with anyone out there who needs some encouragement, some help, some more than mindset, some actual, resources to be able to help you through whatever you're facing.
Oh yeah. Those resources are just like butter in your mouth sometimes when you get the right ones, and it just like, oh, but what you have here, it looks so cool. It looks so, in a way, I guess, kind, because what you're providing to other people and how you're teaching them how to regulate themselves. It to me, that is like a form of kindness in a way. Because you are, letting people know that there are ways, there are methods for this stuff. So it is really, really cool. Rubina, please keep in contact, and I would love to maybe catch up with you down the road and see how things progress from here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here, and I look forward to connecting again.
This episode of It's Your Break was not a paid advertisement. It's Your Break is a news and entertainment podcast. The thoughts and comments of the host or guest are those of the individual speaking, and not necessarily that of It's Your Break or Spark a Vision. Follow It's Your Break on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and YouTube at It's Your Break. Subscribe and follow on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Audible, and iHeart. This podcast is owned, produced, and distributed by Spark a Vision, and is hosted by Jonathan Mertz. Copyright It's Your Break and Spark a Vision. All rights reserved.